Chaim Weiss. Chaim Weiss was a 15-year-old Orthodox Jewish boy attending the Masada of Long Beach, a yeshiva high school in New York. The morning after Halloween in 1986, the entire school was horrified when Chaim was found murdered on his dorm room floor. He had been bludgeoned to death after a sharp blow to the skull and was repeatedly stabbed in the head, but no murder weapon could be found anywhere. Since there was no evidence of a struggle, it seemed likely that Chaim was killed in his bed while he slept before his body was moved to the floor. By all accounts, Chaim was a very well-liked boy, so no one could figure out a possible motive for the crime. There were signs that the killer was familiar with the religious customs of Orthodox Judaism. Even though it had been a chilly night, the window in Chaim's room was open, a custom which is often done to let the deceased person's spirit out. After the murder, one of the school's rabbis left a memorial candle to burn in Chaim's room. 2 days later, a second candle appeared, but no one ever admitted to putting it there. There were no signs of forced entry anywhere, indicating the killer may have been familiar with the dormitory. During the night, another student on Chaim's floor remembered being momentarily awakened when the door to his room was opened before it was immediately shut again. Could the killer have initially entered the wrong room by mistake? After 28 years, authorities have never been able to find a suspect or any answers about why Chaim Weiss was murdered in such a brutal fashion. Doe Mystery. On the morning of November 1, 1980, a truck driver discovered the nude body of a teenage girl next to Interstate 45 just outside of Huntsville in Walker County, Texas. The victim had been sexually assaulted before she was beaten and strangled to death. Since the young girl was never identified, she was simply to become known as the Walker County Jane Doe. It's estimated that she had been murdered several hours before her discovery, and a potentially interesting backstory began to emerge for this girl when witnesses came forward to report their interactions with her on Halloween night. After being let out of a vehicle by an unidentified male at a nearby South End Gulf station, Jane Doe had reportedly asked numerous people for directions to the Ellis Unit prison, claiming she had plans to visit a friend there. However, when her photograph was circulated among the inmates at Ellis Unit, no one would admit to knowing her. Later that night, a truck stop waitress had a similar conversation with Jane Doe. The girl claimed she was 19 years old, hailed from the Aransas Pass area, and seemed to imply that her parents did not care about her. Since this girl was killed exactly 1 year after the Orange Sox murder and there were numerous similarities between the two crimes, Henry Lee Lucas was considered a possible suspect. However, there was never any evidence to connect Lucas to the murder, and the Walker County Jane Doe remains unidentified. Mysterious death of Chris Jenkins. Chris Jenkins was a 21-year-old student from the University of Minnesota who visited a downtown Minneapolis bar on Halloween night in 2002. After leaving the bar around midnight, Chris vanished without a trace. He remained a missing person for 4 months until his body was discovered in the Mississippi River. Since Chris was still wearing his Halloween costume, all indications were that he died shortly after he disappeared. Chris was heavily intoxicated that night, and since his cause of death was determined to be drowning, authorities initially believed it was an accident or suicide. His parents refused to believe this and pressed for a more thorough investigation. Finally, in 2006, the death was reclassified as a homicide. While the authorities have withheld specific details, they claimed that an incarcerated suspect told them he was present when Chris was murdered and thrown off a bridge into the river. Even the police believe this man's story to be credible. No charges have ever been filed. However, one possible theory is that Chris Jenkins could have been a victim in the mysterious Smiley face murders. During this time period, approximately 40 male college students in the United States were victims in a bizarre series of drowning deaths. In some of these cases, unexplained smiley face graffiti was found near the body of water where the victim drowned. This had led some to theorize these deaths are connected and that the victims were drug drug before being thrown into a body of water to make their murder look like an accidental drowning. While no Smiley face graffiti was ever found in connection to Chris Jenkins' death, investigators cannot overlook its similarities to many other unsolved cases.